Quick, I need your help. What would you do? It's a week before Christmas in a small, boring town in England, and you have a regional championship in 8 hours. It's cold, miserable, and to top it all off, you haven't even got a deck ready to play. What would you do? Well, let me tell you the incredible story of what Philip Schultz did. Philip Schultz is one of the game's best players, with a limitless page as long as the list of secret rare cards in modern sets these days. He is no stranger to the Pokemon trading card game. He actually top 32 the previous Pokemon World Championships with Zoro Garb, the same deck his brother used to win the whole thing. So it's safe to say Pokemon runs in the family. But unfortunately for Philip, since those World Championships, he hasn't actually had a regional finish yet. All whilst his brother Robin did top 16 the Sao Paulo International. So looking towards the Harrogate Regional, Philip was eager to get a good result on board. The world's meta that him and his brother did so well on was a bit of a triangle, with Zoroark decks being really strong. Zoroark's combination of Writer's Beating for 1 energy attachment and its monstrous ability trade, which would allow you to discard a card from your hand and then draw 2, was the poster child of the format. However, it struggled to deal with Buzzwole GX for the simple reason of weakness. Buzzwole was a scarily crazy card with its Jet Punch attack putting a ton of pressure on the evolution decks and Knuckle Impact providing big one-hit KOs. The problem with Buzzwole though is that it lost to the Malamar decks. Extremely consistent energy acceleration via Psychic Recharge led to some real good competitive decks also. But the Malamar decks lost to Zoroark and the triangle looked a bit like this. Rayquaza also had the capabilities of beating all 3, however it did have some inherent consistency issues. However, there had been a standard format rotation since that World Championships, meaning Harrogate was in a new format with a crazy new set released. Lost Thunder on face value was absolutely nuts. Bramble offered a strong one prize attacker with Oko potential. Giratina gave Malamar a new, reusable, reliable one prize attacker. Lost March and White Curum were strong rogue one prize decks too. However, the poster child of Lost Thunder had to be Blacephalon GX, a new Bediff contender with its crazy mind-blowing attack which did 50 for each energy you choose to send to the Lost Zone. Sounds a bit costly, but there was a Naganadel in this set which would allow you to get 1 energy from the discard pile and attach it to the Naganadel via charging up. And you could have multiple of these going in a turn. So that sounds good, sure, but it wasn't quite strong enough until B-String came in. An absolutely bonkers item that read if your opponent was on 4 or 3 prize cards remaining, you could grab 2 energies from your deck and attach them to your Ultra Beast in any way you like. On an item card. So this means if you play 2 B-Strings, had 2 charging ups, and had 2 energy attached up to a Blacephalon GX, you have a potential 400 damage in play, just waiting to go boom! Not to mention its GX attack just let you basically discard a prize card, allowing you to have some early game offensive pressure too. Blacephalon wasn't just part of the triangle, it looked to absolutely smash it apart. And Philip knew this. He knew that Blacephalon was the deck to beat for Harrogate. He needed a plan, and he had one with Banette GX. A card which has already seen some sort of success, 15th at Worlds, 33rd and 50th at Offenbach Regionals, and 3rd at Philadelphia too. Normally Banette was seen as a Buzzwole defense for Zoroark, you know, since it hit it for weakness. However, Philip wanted to play it through its ability, Shady Move, which would allow for some damage manipulation shenanigans. And the idea was if you was to use Shady Move to KO a Blacephalon GX mid-turn and then KO another Blacephalon GX with some Gust weaved in, you could actually completely skip your opponent's B-String turn, making Blacephalon much more manageable. Settled. Philip was set on Zoro Banette as he boarded the plane to set off for Harrogate. Also he thought, when Philip landed for that weekend, him and his friends all headed for the flat and begin to practice. And that's when it all started to go wrong for Philip. You see, while Banette sounded good on paper, it was actually quite hard to pull off. A little bit too inconsistent, and he found himself losing to Blacephalon way more than he would like. Started to panic a little bit. there was no way he could take this deck to the regional tomorrow, when the matchup he was aiming to beat was consistently beating him. And he only had a few hours realistically before round 1 was set to kick off. In this panic, Tord jokingly suggested, "Hey, why don't you play Gyarados? It can save you some space and it hits Blacephalon for weakness." Wait a minute. Gyarados? Eureka! Gyarados with its venting anger attack did 50 for each Magikarp in the discard pile, for a DCers no less. This means it could hit for 150 with 3 Magikarp in the discard pile, or even 200 if you use Ditto Prism to get the Gyarados into play. Not only providing a strong wallop to Blacephalon, but also a massive headache for other decks to deal with. It wasn't perfect though, since Gyarados and Zoroark both attacked for a DCE, it meant resources could be rather tight, and bad maths just seemed to plague the deck. But at this point, Philip had no choice. It was already getting quite late. All he could do was just test it throughout the night on TCGO as his friends went to bed, hoping he could fix these glaring issues. Managing to weave a couple hours sleep in though, however, the deck was solved. The bad maths was fixed with 2 copies of Professor Kukui to do an extra 20, and 3 copies of Choice Belt. The 4 DC problem was solved by playing 3 copies of Acerola. This would prevent them hitting the discard pile when the DCs were used to attack with Zoroark. The deck was sorted, Philip was happy. However, there was one more glaring problem. Philip didn't own any Gyarados cards, and Philip only had a matter of minutes to find them. He ran to the venue ASAP, asking everyone he could find if they had any copies of Magikarp or the Gyarados. But they didn't. Feeling desperate, he went to the on-site vendors, his last chance, otherwise it was back to playing Zora Bennett, and he really didn't want to do that. Luckily, they had them though, although he couldn't play the optimal split of Magikarps, resulting in a weird looking deck list. But who cares, that's minor. He had the cards to play the deck that he spent all night testing. He was ready to kick some Blacephalon right down to the bottom tables, although that all seemed to change when he matched his round 1 opponent, Yosefi. Yosefi was playing Blacephalon GX, and he beat Philip. This broke Philip. His morale was at an all-time low. All that late night testing seemingly wasted. After that long hard search for Gyarados, how can he still lose to the deck he was targeting? Feeling deflated though, he managed to play on, and he did rather well, going on an absolute tear for the rest of day 1, not losing one more round, and steaming into day 2 with a record of 7 wins, 1 loss and 1 tie. With that momentum, Philip stormed into day 2 and finished that with a record of 3 wins, 0 losses and 2 ties. This secured him a top 8 placement. However, one of those ties was to Yosefi again from day 1, meaning that Yosefi's Blounds list could prove troublesome for Philip if he had to play it again in Top Cup. Irrespective of that though, Philip was excited. He was only 3 wins away from winning the whole regional with a deck he didn't even have yesterday. His top 8 game was against Ryan Morehouse, playing an Ultra Necrozma Malamar deck. And this was a fairly good matchup for Philip as he managed to win. Going on to top 4, where he played against Jack Colkin, rocking a Zoroark, Ninetales, Lycanroc Weavile deck. This could be trouble. Weavile could pack a huge punch via its Evil Abdenition attack, Lycanroc hit Zoroark for weakness, and Alolan Ninetales just helped smooth everything over with its ability. However, all these moving pieces seem to be a little bit too clunky as the straightforwardness of Zoroark Gyarados got Philip the dub, and he saw himself into the final. But remember Yosefi's Blounds list? The only deck list that managed to beat Philip over the whole event? He had to play that in the final. Oh boy. It wasn't Yosefi playing it though. It was Raz Wolf, an absolutely terrific player who quickly cottoned on to Philip's deck's weakness. Stadiums. Philip didn't run a stadium card, so Raz knew if he could draw into his Heat Factory real fast, he could rely on that extra draw power and hope to snowball the rest of their game. And that's exactly what happened in game 1 as Philip went down. Determined not to give up though, he took a quick game 2 victory, evening it all up, resulting in a win or go home scenario for game 3. But unfortunately for Philip, it wasn't going that well and he started to fall behind. The dream was starting to fade. The one deck Philip wanted to beat so bad. The one deck he spent all night testing against was seemingly about to beat him, just proving how strong this archetype really is. However, Philip did identify that there was a convoluted gameplay line that he could use to win. He had to draw really well and get a little bit lucky. He had to attack with Gyarados to take 2 prize cards, and then not only recycle it to get attacking with it again, find another DCE, but then actually weave in Gust as well to take another 2 prize cards. All of this had to happen perfectly for Philip to close the game out. And even though it required draws from Arceus himself, Philip managed to pull it off and take the game home, not allowing Raz to snatch this wonderful story from Philip's grasp. And that's how Philip Schultz won a regional with a deck he didn't even have a day before.